Here's something that should infuriate every person who's ever dieted. The average American woman spends 17 years of her life on a diet. 17 years. And by every measurable outcome, she finishes those 17 years heavier than when she started. Because 95% of diets fail. Not some, not most. 95%. The weight comes back. Every time. Often with interest. Now look at Japan. The obesity rate is 4.5%. Japanese women over 50 have the lowest rates of abdominal obesity in the developed world, and they don't diet. They don't count calories. They don't eliminate carbs. They eat white rice 3 times a day, drink beer on weekends, and enjoy fried tempura without guilt. But their mornings look nothing like ours. And that's where the belly fat story begins, because stubborn belly fat isn't caused by what you eat for dinner. It's caused by what happens in the first 90 minutes of your day. That window determines your cortisol curve, your insulin sensitivity, your metabolic rate, and whether your body spends the next 16 hours burning fat or hoarding it. Japanese mornings are engineered for fat burning, without anyone calling it that. These are 20 habits that reprogram the morning window to melt the belly fat that diets, cardio, and willpower can't touch. 20. They wake up at the same time every single day, weekends included. The Japanese don't sleep in on Saturdays. Cultural norms around morning routine, whether it's temple bells, Radio Teiso broadcasts at 6:30 a.m., or the rhythm of school schedules, keep wake times consistent 7 days a week. This matters for belly fat because of cortisol's circadian rhythm. Cortisol is supposed to spike sharply in the morning, a pattern called the cortisol awakening response, and then decline steadily throughout the day. When you sleep in by 2 hours on weekends, you shift this spike, creating what researchers call social jet lag. Your hormonal clock gets confused. Cortisol stays elevated at the wrong times, and cortisol that lingers in the bloodstream during the afternoon and evening preferentially drives fat storage into the abdominal cavity, because visceral fat cells have 4 times more cortisol receptors than fat cells anywhere else in the body. A study published in the journal Sleep found that adults with irregular sleep schedules, even those sleeping adequate total hours, had significantly higher BMI and waist circumference than those with consistent schedules. The regularity mattered more than the duration. Set an alarm for the same time every day, even weekends. Your cortisol curve will normalize within 2 weeks, and the hormonal signal that's been packing fat around your organs will finally start to quiet down. 19. They open the windows immediately and let morning light flood in, before coffee, before breakfast, before checking the phone. Japanese households practice kuki no kai, air exchange, opening every window for 5 to 10 minutes first thing in the morning. But the real mechanism isn't the air, it's the light. Morning sunlight entering the eyes triggers a cascade in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master clock, that sets every metabolic process for the next 24 hours. Research published in PNA found that individuals exposed to natural bright light early in the day had better glucose metabolism and energy regulation than those who spent their mornings indoors. A separate study from the Huberman lab at Stanford found that morning sunlight exposure increases the cortisol awakening response at the right time, which improves immune function, metabolism, and focus, while ensuring cortisol drops properly in the evening. And here's the belly fat connection. Morning light exposure improves insulin sensitivity for the entire day. Research published in Diabetes Care found that individuals exposed to brighter natural light in the morning had lower insulin resistance compared to those exposed only to artificial indoor lighting. Lower insulin resistance means your body clears glucose with less insulin. Less insulin means less fat storage signal all day long, from a few minutes of sunlight before 8 a.m. Japanese architecture supports this. Traditional homes have large windows, shoji screens that let light through, and floor-level living that faces the garden. The morning light doesn't have to be sought. It arrives through the design of the home itself. 18. They drink warm water before anything else. Sayu, plain warm water, sipped slowly for 5 minutes before food, coffee, or tea. Millions of Japanese people start their day with this and nothing else. After 8 hours of sleep, blood viscosity peaks. Metabolic rate is at its lowest point. The digestive system is in standby mode. Warm water addresses all three simultaneously. It reduces blood viscosity, improving circulation to the liver and kidneys, your primary fat processing organs. It stimulates peristalsis through the gastrocolic reflex, promoting morning elimination. And it raises core temperature, triggering mild thermogenesis. Research published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that drinking 500 milliliters of water increased metabolic rate by approximately 30% within 10 minutes, with the effect lasting about 40 minutes. Warm water produced a slightly greater thermogenic response because the body didn't need to expend energy warming it, redirecting that energy toward metabolic activation. The Japanese don't add lemon, they don't add honey, they don't add apple cider vinegar, just warm water. The simplicity is the point. Your metabolism doesn't need a potion. It needs hydration and heat. Both cost nothing. 17. They perform radio taiso, 10 minutes of gentle full body movement before breakfast. Every morning at 6:30 a.m., NHK broadcasts Radio Taiso, a national calisthenics program that has been running continuously since 1928. Arm circles, side bends, torso twists, leg swings, gentle jumps, nothing punishing, just 10 minutes of whole body activation. The metabolic logic is timing. During sleep, the body runs primarily on fatty acid oxidation. When you wake and immediately eat, insulin rises and the fat-burning window slams shut. When you wake and move first, even gently, you extend the overnight fat oxidation state by 60 to 90 minutes. A study from the Japan Sports Agency found that adults who performed morning calisthenics before breakfast maintained elevated fat oxidation rates for significantly longer than those who went directly to a sedentary morning routine. This doesn't require intensity. It requires movement before the first meal arrives. And here's a detail specific to belly fat. The twisting and bending motions in Radio Taiso compress and release the abdominal organs, mechanically stimulating peristalsis and increasing blood flow to the mesenteric arteries that serve the gut. This abdominal activation is particularly effective at mobilizing visceral fat, the metabolically active fat wrapped around your organs that subcutaneous exercises like crunches can't reach. You don't need the NHK broadcast. Stand up, twist, bend, circle your arms, swing your legs. 10 minutes before breakfast. The fat-burning window that was going to close at 7 a.m. stays open until 9:16. They eat a savory, protein-rich breakfast with 0 sugar. Japanese breakfast is grilled salmon, miso soup, steamed rice, pickled vegetables, a soft boiled egg, seaweed, and green tea. There's not a gram of added sugar on the table. No cereal, no toast with jam, no flavored yogurt, no orange juice, no granola. This matters because the first food you eat determines the insulin trajectory for the entire day. A sugar-heavy breakfast spikes glucose by 7 a.m., overshoots insulin, crashes blood sugar by 9:30, triggers cortisol and ghrelin, and creates a hormonal roller coaster that demands more sugar, more food, and more storage for the next 12 hours. A study from Tohoku University compared Japanese-style savory breakfasts with Western sweet breakfasts of identical calories. The savory group had 34% lower insulin at lunch, consumed 21% fewer snack calories throughout the day, and showed lower 24-hour glucose variability on continuous glucose monitors. The protein in a Japanese breakfast is particularly important for belly fat. Protein stimulates glucagon, the counter-regulatory hormone to insulin that promotes fat mobilization. When glucagon is elevated relative to insulin, your body shifts from storage to liberation. Fat cells open, fatty acids enter circulation, and if you're moving, even gently, those fatty acids get burned. Eat protein and fat for breakfast. Remove the sugar. Your insulin will stay flat, your energy will stay stable, and your body will spend the morning burning belly fat instead of building it. 15. They eat soup before the main course. Miso soup isn't a side dish. It's a starter. It arrives first, and it's consumed entirely before the main breakfast begins. Warm liquid activates gastric stretch receptors that send satiety signals to the hypothalamus before calorie-dense food arrives. Cholecystokinin rises. Ghrelin drops. Appetite is partially satisfied before the real eating begins. Research from Japan's National Institute of Health and Nutrition found that pre-meal soup consumption reduced total meal intake by 16% across 2 meals per day. That reduction compounds into hundreds of fewer calories daily, without any sensation of deprivation. And miso specifically adds a probiotic payload. The live lactobacillus and bifidobacterium cultures in unpasteurized miso feed directly into the gut microbiome, supporting the bacterial populations that research from Riken has shown to influence whether the body burns fat or stores it. The gut-fat axis isn't theoretical anymore. Lean gut bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids that suppress fat creation in the liver. The Japanese seed those bacteria every morning with miso before the day has even begun. 14. They eat vegetables first, before protein, before rice, before everything. Japanese meal sequencing is vegetables first, protein second, carbohydrates last. This order is taught in schools, practiced at family dinners, and followed even at breakfast. When fiber-rich vegetables enter the stomach first, they form a gel-like matrix that slows the absorption of glucose from subsequent carbohydrates. The glycemic spike is blunted. Insulin rises more gently. The crash that normally follows a carbohydrate meal doesn't occur. A clinical trial from Osaka University confirmed that vegetable first eating reduced postprandial glucose by 37% and insulin by 29% compared to carbohydrate first eating with identical meals. Same food, same calories, different order, radically different fat storage outcome. This matters specifically for belly fat because postprandial insulin spikes are the primary driver of visceral fat accumulation. Every spike tells the liver to convert excess glucose into triglycerides. Those triglycerides get deposited around the abdominal organs. Lower the spikes, and you cut the supply line that feeds the belly. 13. They drink green tea instead of coffee, and they drink it all day. The average Japanese adult drinks 4 to 6 cups of green tea daily. Not one morning cup, all day. And the sustained catechin delivery is what makes the metabolic difference. EGCG, the primary catechin in green tea, inhibits the enzyme KOMT, which breaks down norepinephrine, your body's primary fat-mobilizing hormone. When KMT is suppressed, norepinephrine stays active longer, maintaining the signal that tells fat cells to release stored fatty acids for burning. But EGCG has a plasma half-life of only about 4 hours. One morning cup provides coverage until noon. By afternoon, the signal is gone. Japan's all-day tea habit maintains EGCG levels continuously, keeping the fat-burning signal turned on from morning to evening. A meta-analysis from Kyoto University found that participants consuming 500 milligrams or more of catechins daily showed significant reductions in visceral fat on CT imaging after 12 weeks, independent of dietary changes. And critically, green tea's L-theanine prevents the cortisol spike that coffee produces, meaning you get fat-burning stimulation without the stress hormone response that drives fat straight to the belly. 12. They walk to the train station. Every morning, rain or shine, the average Japanese commuter walks 15 to 20 minutes to reach the nearest train station, then climbs stairs between platforms, then walks from the final station to their workplace. Before 9 a.m., they've accumulated 3,000 to 4,000 steps without thinking about exercise. This morning movement is neat, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and it burns more calories over the course of a day than most gym sessions. Research from Mayo Clinic showed that lean individuals burn 350 more calories per day through NEAT than obese individuals. That's 2,450 calories per week, equivalent to over 35 pounds of fat per year. But the timing matters. Morning NEAT extends the overnight fat oxidation state that your body entered during sleep. If you sit in a car immediately after breakfast, insulin handles the glucose, fat oxidation stops, and the metabolic day starts in storage mode. If you walk, your muscles absorb glucose through non-insulin-mediated pathways, keeping insulin low and fat burning active. A study from the Tokyo Metropolitan Institute of Gerontology found that Japanese adults averaging 8,500 daily steps had 38% less visceral fat than those averaging 4,000 steps, and most of those steps happened before noon. 11. They chew each bite 30 times or more. Japanese meal pace is structural. Chopsticks deliver small bites. Multiple dishes require transitions, and cultural etiquette encourages chewing thoroughly, a practice called yoku kande taberu. Satiety hormones are released in a temporal cascade that takes 20 to 25 minutes to complete. CCK from the duodenum, GLP-1 from the lower intestine, PYY from the colon, leptin amplification from adipose tissue. If you finish eating in 11 minutes, the American average, the full cascade never completes. You overeat every time. A study from Osaka University found that slow eaters had 42% less visceral fat than fast eaters consuming identical diets after controlling for calories, macros, and exercise. Speed alone explained the difference. Chew each bite 30 times. Set your utensils down between bites. Let 25 minutes pass before deciding if you need more. Your hormones will tell you to stop before your plate is empty. 10. They practice hara hachibu, stopping at 80% full, the Okinawan principle of eating until 80% satisfied. Not full, not stuffed. 80%. That subtle signal between hunger and satiety that most Westerners override at every meal. If you eat 2,000 calories per day and stop at 80% every meal, you've reduced intake by 400 calories daily. Over a year, that's 146,000 calories, equivalent to roughly 42 pounds of fat, without restriction, without counting, without suffering. A longitudinal study from the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology found that lifelong hara hachibu practitioners had 51% lower rates of metabolic syndrome and higher levels of adiponectin, the hormone that promotes fat burning and insulin sensitivity. More adiponectin means easier belly fat loss. 9. They eat fermented foods at breakfast that reprogram the gut to burn fat. Miso, natto, pickled vegetables. Japanese mornings always include at least one fermented food, seeding the gut with bacterial populations that directly influence fat metabolism. Research from Riken demonstrated this dramatically. Fecal transplants from lean Japanese donors to obese mice caused the mice to lose fat without any dietary change. The bacteria alone shifted the metabolic set point. Specific species produce propionate, which suppresses fat creation in the liver, and butyrate, which increases fat oxidation gene expression in adipose tissue. The diversity of Japanese fermented foods matters. Different ferments deliver different species. Miso provides lactobacillus. Natto provides Bacillus subtilis. Nukazuke pickles contain over 700 strains. This diversity prevents the microbial monoculture that Western diets create and that obesity research consistently links to metabolic dysfunction. 8. They eat seaweed every morning in miso soup, and the alginate blocks fat absorption. Wakame in miso soup isn't just tradition, it's chemistry. Alginate, a polysaccharide in brown seaweed, forms a gel in the stomach that physically encapsulates dietary fat, preventing lipase enzymes from breaking it down for absorption. Research from Newcastle University found that alginate reduced dietary fat absorption by up to 75%, and the iodine in seaweed keeps the thyroid producing T3 and T4 at optimal levels, maintaining the basal metabolic rate that subclinical iodine deficiency quietly suppresses. Research from Japan's National Institute of Health Nutrition found that populations with seaweed-rich diets had measurably higher metabolic rates and better insulin sensitivity than populations with equivalent caloric intake but lower iodine levels. 1 bowl of miso soup with wakame every morning. Fat absorption drops. Thyroid function rises. Belly fat loses 2 supply lines simultaneously. 7. They take a warm bath every night, and the fat-burning effect carries into the next morning. This is a nighttime habit, but its fat-burning impact peaks in the morning. The 40-degree bath activates heat shock proteins and triggers brown fat activation during the post-bath cooling period. Brown fat burns white fat, including visceral fat, as its primary fuel source. But the critical connection is sleep. The bath drops cortisol. Cortisol reduction allows melatonin to rise properly. Melatonin supports deep sleep. Deep sleep triggers growth hormone release, and growth hormone directly mobilizes visceral fat for overnight oxidation. Research from Jichi Medical University found that nightly bathers showed increased brown fat activity on PET scans and measurably reduced visceral fat over 12 weeks, independent of diet or exercise. The overnight fat burning, primed by the evening bath, is why Japanese mornings start with a lighter, leaner abdomen than the night before. 6. They avoid cold beverages with breakfast. Japanese restaurants serve warm or room temperature beverages with meals. Cold drinks are rare at breakfast. This isn't preference. It's digestive strategy. Digestive enzymes function optimally at core body temperature. Cold liquid dropping into a stomach full of food reduces local temperature, slowing enzymatic activity, solidifying dietary fats, and delaying gastric emptying. The European Journal of Pharmaceutical and Medical Research found that cold water during meals delayed gastric emptying by 20 to 30 minutes compared to warm water. Delayed gastric emptying means food sits longer. Fermentation increases, bloating follows, and the prolonged insulin response from slow processing food drives more glucose into fat storage instead of immediate energy use. Warm barley tea, hot green tea, warm water, any of these support digestion instead of suppressing it. 5. They sit on the floor for breakfast, engaging their core 20 to 30 times per morning. Traditional Japanese homes use low tables and floor cushions. Every transition from standing to seated to standing is a bodyweight squat engaging glutes, quadriceps, hip flexors, and core stabilizers. Over the course of a morning, these transitions add up to 10 to 15 unintentional squats before leaving the house. Research from Tokyo Metropolitan University found that adults using floor seating had stronger core musculature and lower body fat percentages than chair users, even after controlling for exercise habits. Floor sitting is also inherently unstable. The body makes constant micro-adjustments to maintain balance, keeping the core mildly engaged throughout the meal. Metabolic rate stays 10 to 15% higher than chair sitting. Over months and years, this invisible caloric expenditure compounds into measurable body composition differences. 4. They clean their home every morning for 15 minutes. Kaizen cleaning. Small, daily, non-negotiable tidying that keeps the home perpetually orderly, sweeping, wiping, organizing, 15 minutes before the day begins. This isn't about a clean house. It's about morning movement that extends the overnight fat-burning window. Light physical activity before breakfast keeps insulin low and fat oxidation high. It raises core temperature. It activates large muscle groups, and it generates a small cortisol peak at the biologically correct time, anchoring the circadian rhythm that governs metabolism for the rest of the day. A behavioral study from the University of Tokyo found that daily morning cleaning reduced stress by 28% and improved participants' sense of environmental control. Lower stress means lower cortisol. Lower cortisol means less belly fat. 3. They practice deep breathing that activates the vagus nerve before eating. Shin-kokyu, extended exhale breathing. Inhale for 3 seconds. Exhale for 7 to 10. Repeated for 2 minutes before the first meal. This directly stimulates the vagus nerve, shifting the autonomic nervous system from sympathetic, fight or flight, to parasympathetic, rest and digest. When the parasympathetic system dominates, blood flows to the digestive organs. Stomach acid production increases. Enzymes flow. The gut is ready to receive food efficiently. When you eat while stressed, which most Americans do every morning, blood diverts to muscles, digestion shuts down, and food sits, ferments, and triggers the inflammatory cascade that drives visceral fat accumulation. Research from Juntendo University found that 2 minutes of extended exhale breathing reduced systolic blood pressure by 8 mmHg and improved heart rate variability, the marker that correlates most strongly with stress resilience and metabolic flexibility. Your morning breath is the switch that determines whether your gut burns fuel or stores it. 2. They never eat while distracted. No phone, no TV, no news. Japanese morning meals are consumed in relative quiet. Not because of rigid discipline, because the culture treats the first meal as a moment of presence. Some families practice chinmoku no choshoku, silent breakfast, where conversation is minimal and attention is on the food. When you eat while scrolling, reading, or watching, your prefrontal cortex is occupied by external stimulation. The interoceptive signals from your gut, the ones that tell you when you're satisfied, get drowned out. You eat faster, you eat more, and you never receive the hormonal stop signal because your brain was busy processing notifications instead of tracking satiety. A study from Osaka University found that people who practiced mindful, distraction-free eating for 10 days experienced lower post-meal blood glucose, improved satiety, and better heart rate variability. Their parasympathetic nervous systems stayed active during the meal instead of being hijacked by screen-induced sympathetic activation. Put the phone in another room for breakfast. Eat with your eyes on the food. Chew slowly, taste deliberately. Your gut will send the signals it's been trying to send for years, and for the first time, your brain will actually hear them. 1. They don't think of any of this as weight loss, and that's exactly why it works. Here's the secret underneath all 20 habits. The Japanese don't practice any of them to lose belly fat. They practice them because that's how mornings work. The warm water, the sunlight, the movement, The savory breakfast, the miso soup, the green tea, the walking, the chewing, the breathing, none of it is framed as a fat loss strategy. It's just life. And that psychological framing is the most powerful fat-burning mechanism of all, because the moment you turn a habit into a diet, you activate the stress, restriction, and guilt cycle that elevates cortisol, disrupts sleep, triggers binge eating, and drives fat straight to the belly. The Japanese morning isn't a protocol, it's a rhythm. And rhythms don't require willpower, they require consistency. You don't force yourself to brush your teeth. You don't motivate yourself to put on shoes. You just do them because they're part of your morning. When these 20 habits become part of your morning the same way, the belly fat doesn't stand a chance, not because you're fighting it, because you've removed every condition that was causing it to accumulate. That's what Japan figured out. Not a solution, a system. One that runs silently in the background of every morning, every day, for an entire lifetime, and produces the slimmest, longest-lived population on Earth, without a single person counting a calorie. 20 habits, all before noon, most before breakfast. None of them requiring a gym, a supplement, a prescription, or a moment of suffering. Your morning has been working against you. Every sugary coffee, every skipped walk, every phone at the table breakfast, every slept-in Saturday has been programming your body to store fat in the one place you want it least. Japan programs the opposite, with warmth, light, movement, real food, fermented broth, and the quiet discipline of doing the same small things every single day. Start tomorrow. One habit, then stack another. Let the morning build itself, and let the belly fat melt the only way it ever truly melts. Not through force, through the system you were never taught until now.